Well, back in the late 80s, we were having a problem having children, and we decided to look into adoption, but it was always something that we wanted to do. We had relatives in the family who had already adopted kids, both domestically and internationally, and we said, irregardless of this happening, this is something we always wanted to do. So we started looking into various sources, and we had heard about the Adoptive Parents Committee, which is a Long Island-based association of people who have adopted and had kids of various ages, and they told us about a few sources where kids were readily available for adoption. So. Oh, it was so unique. I have two boys, Patrick and Shane. Patrick is the oldest. He's 26 and Shane is 24. And Patrick he was adopted from Guadalajara, Mexico. And it was just a wonderful experience traveling down there. And living down there for 6 weeks, traveling between Guadalajara, Mexico City, La Ciudad Juarez, and then with this little baby in a papoose running around Mexico, and and then we brought him back into the United States, and we refinalized his adoption back in the United States, and then applied for citizenship. And getting his citizenship was a wonderful experience too when he was 2. So yeah. Well, you always have the fear of, what is this child going to be like? What is he going to look like? He's not going to look like you know that, and that's got to be okay with you. He's not going to have the same genetics that you have, but that has to be okay with you, and that's a decision you have to make when you adopt. And, there's never been a time that my boys did not know that they were adopted. They don't look like us. We're both very Irish-German backgrounds, and here we have 2 children of Mexican descent. So there was never a time that they didn't know that they weren't adopted. So. I think they figured it out. Their skin is darker. They definitely have different features, facial features than what we have, and that was always something to be aware of. So they noticed it, and we knew it from the get-go. And people notice it too, and it's sometimes interesting to see people's reactions when you're in the store and they see you with a child, and many people come up to you and say, "Hey, where'd you get that child?" And I had that in the supermarket. One woman, an elderly woman, came up to me and she said, honey, how much did he cost?" And it was so interesting. And then at first I was taken back, and then I said no, and then I started asking her questions, and she was in tears by the end of the conversation. Her daughter was trying to adopt, had several miscarriages, and really wanted to adopt, and she just wanted to know, where did I go to get a child? And so that's where these doors open, and she was just so grateful afterwards that I gave her the information, I gave her the contact, and I hope it worked out for her daughter. From the moment you hold that child for the first time that it's your own. Absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. That bonding takes place whether you give birth or you adopt that child. I also, later in life, was lucky enough to have a biological child, and there is no difference in the amount of love and bonding that is between your natural birth child and your adopted children. Absolutely no difference at all. In fact, I always make the joke when people talk about childbirth, and I say, actually the flight to Mexico was much more significant and severe than the actual childbirth of my younger child. So. Oh, they love each other. They absolutely adore each other. In fact, even though the boys are significantly older than she is, they're wrestling on the floor like regular siblings would do right up to this age, even 26 and she's 14. They're still wrestling on the floor together, and you would see no difference at all, other than they look differently. Well, I think the excitement of having them home and just raising a child for the first time, and I mean, that's an excitement any parent would have, is, where do they sleep? Where do you, how do you travel in the car with them? How do you take care of them, getting up every couple of hours, feeding them? That's what any parent goes through, whether it's biological or adopted. So it was very exciting. Actually, when we came back from Guadalajara, For Pat, our family had arranged for a limousine to take us home from the airport when we flew in, so that was exciting. And then with Shane was adopted. When we decided to adopt Shane, it had taken us a long time to get Pat. We had the paperwork translated into Spanish. And originally, when we were looking to adopt for the first time, we were on a waiting list for Chile, the country of Chile. And the country had a change in government, and it stopped. The adoption process stopped for everyone. So we were told about this attorney through the Adoptive Parents Committee of an attorney who had some children down in Guadalajara that were living in the streets and needed to be adopted. So we decided to, we already had the paperwork done, the home study done, it was translated into Spanish, so we just switched right over, and we got Patrick within a month after that. So then when we had Pat, he was 2 years old, we said, okay, let's adopt again, let's do this again. And we said, because we're Caucasian, it would be good to have another Hispanic child. So we started looking around the United States at different agencies that would have Hispanic children for adoption. And we found an agency down in Texas that worked with people that had children from Mexico that wanted them adopted or were giving birth in the United States and wanted them adopted here. So we figured it would be another 2-year process, and again, within 2 weeks, we got a phone call after the home study was done and submitted, hey, we got this baby boy born, and would you be interested? So within 24 hours, actually, we flew down with Patrick and went right into the nursery, and this experience, we were able to meet the birth mother, actually, and the birth father, which was a very nice experience and different from the Mexican experience. And Pat went in right with us, and we took Shane home within 24 hours with us. We all flew back as a family back to the United States. So. Pat, again, from Guadalajara, really doesn't bring it up at all. He doesn't bring it up. I've offered to take him back to Mexico to see where he came from, and he came from some very poor conditions because we were able to live down there for a number of weeks, we were able to travel around. So we saw the conditions he came from, which were really miles of just cinder blocks with tarps thrown over them, and that's the village that he came from. I mean, very poor conditions. Even in the United States, our worst conditions are far better than some of the poorest conditions in other third world countries. And that's where Pat came from. Shane was a different situation. When we went to Shane, to get Shane, we went down to San Antonio, Texas, to an agency where he was born, and we went right into the hospital down there, so the situation was certainly different for the two of them. Mm-hmm. So. Shane does. Every once in a while he does. Even when he was little, you know how kids get angry and they say, that's it, I'm running away from home. He would always say, that's it, I would get a letter, that's it, I'm going to find my real parents. And so we say, okay. And of course there's a little bit of hurt in there, but you know that this is something that adoptive kids go through. So he would usually go outside, hang out at the side of the house, and then he'd come in and have hot cocoa with us, and everything would be okay. We'd work out whatever issue it was at that point. But again, at the first couple of years that Shane was born, the biological parent did ask for pictures, and we gave them. But after 3 years, she didn't ask anymore. So, I keep on hoping. I actually hope that she reaches out to him, and at some point he decides to reach out to her, because I believe she still is in the United States, although I don't know for sure. But it would certainly be easier to find her than it would be for Pat, coming from a rural part of Mexico, almost on the Guatemalan border. So. I love them for who they are. They're both very different children, and sometimes people look at them and, they say, okay, are they brothers? And I said, yes, they're brothers, absolutely brothers. No, well, they're biological brothers. No, they're not biologically brothers. They look differently. They absolutely do. One is very good with his hands. He could fix anything. You give him anything that's, a clock that falls apart, He can put it together. The other one is more more like me, more wants to get back to the community, you know, wants to help people into healthcare. So both very different personalities, but bonded very, very closely. It's wonderful. It's really, whether you can have a biological child or not, it's absolutely, absolutely the most wonderful gift that you could ever do. Not only are you giving a child a chance at a better life, but you're also giving it to yourself. This is a child. This is your child. And there is no difference in feeling between a biological child and an adopted child. Absolutely nothing. No, I would go ahead and do it. Don't be afraid. There's always fears. There's fears when you're pregnant. There's fears that your child is going to be healthy. Go ahead and do it. Give it a shot. Do it. Stop the bounce.